Welcome, everyone, to this meeting of SABR's East Coast Cooperative, a group of 7 chapters in Eastern Canada and the United States who are working to bring you more great presentations. I'm Bruce McClure, the chair of the Clyde Sukeforth chapter in Maine and New Hampshire, and tonight we have yet another great talk for you. Thomas Edison didn't invent baseball, but he did describe himself as an enthusiastic, lifelong fan of the game. In this presentation, the authors will discuss how they discovered a treasure trove of previously unexplored Edisonia relating to baseball, including, among other things, an 1880s proposal to the inventor to light baseball fields for nighttime play, a collection of T206 baseball cards, a file of the day-to-day correspondence and records of the first year of the Edison Baseball Club, a semi-pro industrial league team, and Edison's late-in-life relationship with Ty Cobb, Connie Mack, and the Philadelphia Athletics. The presentation will include examples of photographs, documents, period news accounts, and the T206 cards used in preparing 2 books centered on Edison and baseball, and an article in the August 2024 issue of The Inside Game. SABR member J.B. Manheim was founding director of the School of Media and Public Affairs at the George Washington University, where he developed the world's first degree-granting program in political communication and is a past chair of the political communication section of the American Political Science Association. In 1995, he was named District of Columbia Professor of the Year. He is the author of The Deadball Files, an award-winning series of present-day mysteries and legal thrillers grounded in events of the Deadball era, and with Lawrence Knorr, co-authored of What's in Ted's Wallet, the newly revealed T206 baseball card collection of Thomas Edison's youngest son. Lawrence Knorr is a lifelong baseball fan, and he is also a member of SABR. He has written or co-authored several baseball books and numerous other histories and biographies. Knorr graduated from Wilson College with a BA in Business and Economics and earned an MBA from Penn State with an emphasis on finance and operations. He is now completing his doctoral dissertation in history at Liberty University. God bless you, Lawrence. You can listen to his podcast, the Sunbury Press Books Show, on the Bookspeak Network. JB and Lawrence, welcome this evening. How are you?
Great.
Very good. Thank you, Bruce. And also shout out thanks to Donna, who some months ago got the ball rolling on this presentation, I think before there was an East Coast cooperative. And thanks to everybody for joining in this evening. Lawrence, you have the slides?
I'm starting them.
Well, no. There we go. This is really a presentation in 3 parts, all of which have to do in one way or another with the Thomas Edison National Historical Park in West Orange, New Jersey. I got into this through the series of legal thrillers and mysteries that I've been doing, all of which are grounded in historical research on the dead ball era in baseball, but are contemporary stories, present day stories. And by the time I got to book 5 in that series, I was not sure I could stay with the baseball theme and find enough information, but I was getting interested in Thomas Edison as maybe another topic to write on. And I started to do a little research on Edison-related materials, which turned out to be an amazingly easy thing to do. There are lots of resources. The one I started with, because it was the easiest of all, was an online archive that's completely searchable on the internet at Rutgers University on Edison papers. Now, I think the papers themselves, either all or mostly, are housed at the park, but this project at Rutgers made them very accessible. Lawrence, want to go to the next one? I didn't actually, there are thousands and thousands of documents, and I found things that were very interesting and useful to develop a story, but there wasn't really very much on baseball. I did, however, come across this. It looks like a telegram, but it's a letter from the president of the telegraph company from 1885. And I pulled out the part where he is suggesting to Edison that they could perhaps use incandescent lighting to allow baseball games to be played at night. He says, if this could be done, we have a bonanza in the grounds at Staten Island and transportation to and from them beyond the dreams of avarice. I think that's just a misspelled avarice there. So you be thinking about it. And I don't know that Edison ever really thought much about it because there were no other references, and he didn't really respond to that point in his response to this memo. But it got me thinking because it was a way of linking Edison back into the baseball writing that I was doing. So I then went to a couple of other sources, including, and we can switch again, the Edison Ford Winter Estates down in Fort Myers, Florida, because I came across references to a presentation that someone down there had done on the subject of Edison and baseball. And there was a brief quote from a newspaper article that I was then able to chase down. And I've blown up part of the quote. I've not attended very many big games, but I don't believe, and I'm reading these because I know some folks are on telephones or small screens, but I don't believe you can find a more ardent follower of baseball than myself, as a day seldom passes when I do not read the sporting pages of the newspapers. In this way, I keep close tab on the two major leagues, and there was one time when I could name the players of every club in both leagues. It's actually a very, that's the part that gets quoted a lot by the folks down at Fort Myers, but it's actually a very revealing article written by Edison himself, apparently. This is from February of 1927. And some of his views are not exactly the views of a majority of baseball fans. There's another place in the article I didn't pull out, but I'll read it. It says, if every youth who aspires to be a baseball player follows the career of Ty Cobb, they won't go wrong. He's an immaculate man, one of the cleanest the game has ever known. I don't know that a great many of Cobb's contemporaries would agree with that characterization, but Edison was clearly thinking about it. He was at that point had shared or neighboring winter homes in Fort Myers with Henry Ford, and Edison became a big fan of the Philadelphia Athletics when they started doing spring training down there. He would drive his car over to the ballpark and park along the third baseline and watch the action. And there's some photos of that. Next slide, please. There's this one, that's Cobb on the left. Cobb ended his career in 1927, I think, with the Athletics, and Edison in the middle, and Connie Mack on the right. And there are various stories about what they're pointing at, but one story says that Mack is pointing out the possibility of lighting baseball fields with Edison's lights. So this is 40 years later and comes back around to the same theme from 1885. Slide. This is from the same day. You can see Mack there catching, and Edison had borrowed a bat from Al Simmons, so he was batting, and Ty Cobb, who's not shown in this picture, was pitching. And there are also stories about what happened here. Supposedly Edison hit a line drive back at Cobb, knocked him over, and they were joshing back and forth. So he was very into the A's when they came down to Florida to do this. And the next picture that we can look at is actually either from that same day or from a time very close to it in 1927. What happened was Edison invited the entire ball club over to Seminole Lodge, which was his winter home down in Fort Myers, for lunch. And so here they all are on the porch. You can see Edison and his wife Mina in front, and over Edison's left shoulder in the V-neck, that's Cobb. And to Cobb's left, hiding behind the bush almost, is Connie Mack. So the story that goes with this is that Edison invited all the players over and had cigars that he handed out to all of them. And he was disappointed because they weren't smoking the cigars. Everyone was putting them in their pockets. And when he asked about it, he was told that they all thought they were souvenirs. So he was about to order another round of cigars when Mina said it was time to come in and have lunch. Next slide, please. Now, this is earlier than that. Back in 1912, Edison began the practice of having inviting his employees to a kind of annual company picnic where they would play various games. And here he is throwing a pitch which someone has taken the trouble to trace its path and to trace the batter's swing. You can actually see the ball a foot or so in front of the catcher's mitt. But he was into baseball. He would have been in his 60s or 70s at this point. And the next slide is from the same day. Here he is throwing out the first pitch of the actual baseball game. And you could see that they drew quite a crowd from the company to watch these things. And one more picture here. This is a kind of a transition to the next part of the talk. This is a little bit later. This is from the 1920s. The year isn't entirely clear. But there's Edison in the middle of the baseball team with Edison's on the uniforms. This is the Edison Baseball Club in Orange, New Jersey. And this is the club that we're about to explore the origins of in the next section. So moving along. When I had that information and I began to develop a plot for the book, what I really needed to do to make the plot work was to find a legal way to go into a national park and national historic site in a planned, very private community and dig holes looking for buried treasure and a lost Edison experiment. And I figured that I needed to go look at the ground, but also I needed to know if there was any legal way to do that. I didn't want to be too big a troublemaker. So I got in touch with the superintendent of the Edison National Historical Park in West Orange, who was a fellow at the time named Tom Ross, and he put me in touch with Lenny DeGraff, who was the archivist. And I'm not sure if Lenny has logged into the call yet or not. He was going to, but if he has, a real shout out to him because he made all of what follows possible and was very helpful. Now you can imagine that they would have been a little concerned when some stranger sends him a note and says, I want to know how to dig holes in a national park. But they were very helpful in providing access to documents about how one might legally go about doing that, what the process might be. And they were so nice that when I went up to look at the park, I made a point of stopping by the archive to visit with Lenny and just say hello. And he said, you know, no one's ever asked us about Edison and baseball before. I have a couple of boxes here that you might be interested in seeing. Slide. So there were two boxes. I'm going to talk about the first one, and Lawrence will tell you about the second one. The first box we did not really exploit, but I have tried to make it more available to people. I did an article for the Inside Game in the August issue that you can find that tells some of the story of this team and mostly tells you what's the kinds of things that are in the documents. And when I started out talking with Donna about doing a talk of this sort, I was really interested in, still am, in encouraging anybody, either in the New Jersey area or elsewhere, to take a look at the box of papers that I found, because the first box that Lenny pulled out was a daily file of all the correspondence and some other documents for the 1914 version of the Edison Club team. And they had tried to have a team in 1913. Edison himself and his battery company had provided some money, but they were doing it under the auspices of the Edison Club of Orange, New Jersey, which was basically white-collar workers from the Edison works. And the team that they were able to raise, I think, wasn't very good, didn't draw much attention. So next slide, please. The president of the team, the manager of the team, Clarence B. Hayes, who was also the manager of the music room at the Edison Works, where they did all the recordings and was a major Edison insider, set out in 1914 to do it right by seeking permission from Ernst Berggren, who was the chief accountant for the company, to broaden out the recruiting and get all the blue collar workers in from all over the Edison Works. And he wanted to do that, and he was looking for financial support. So you find correspondence pertaining to that. And I'm basically just going to show you some sample correspondence from what's there. If somebody wants to do a piece on industrial league baseball or semi-pro or New York, New Jersey area baseball at that level, there's a lot of stuff in this file, and I haven't really done more than tap it. You'd have lots of things to work on, and maybe we can give you some suggestions here. So here's the startup correspondence. Next slide, please. You find things like this. Scheduling was a big challenge for these teams. So Fred Pace in Brooklyn put together a directory of the teams that could be scheduled in New York City, Brooklyn, Bayonne, Yonkers, Newark, White Plains, College Point, Hoboken, Jersey City, and throughout New York and New Jersey, and he also got up into Connecticut. And he sent this postcard notice around, and as you can see, be sure and write your name and address plainly so he could send the directory to you if you paid him was 25 cents for his directory. It's 1914. Next, please. Scheduling was a big part of what's in this file, and this is just not anywhere near half, I think, of the teams that they were contacting or in contact with about scheduling baseball games. And you can see there are various communities that reach out as far as Connecticut, throughout New Jersey, New York. There are industrial teams. You've got Westinghouse and the New York Central and Hudson River Railroad and National Biscuit Company. There's a team from the Office of the Overseer of the Poor for the town of Oyster Bay, Quarters of Company D of the National Guard of New Jersey. Lots and lots of scheduling correspondence. Some of this has information on the various teams, who they played, some of their players, some of the scores from previous games, and some of the style of baseball they played. Next, please. My favorite was this one. This was a postcard that was sent in to Hayes from the manager in Port Washington, Long Island, who says, "Dear sir, would like to schedule a game with your club. Kindly state guarantees." Now, the guarantees were on the order of $10 to $12 a game, so this was not high stakes. But the front side of that postcard is a little bit risque. "I'm waiting for you in Port Washington. Please hurry. There's lots doing." And I rather liked Hayes's response, which halfway in says, "I will leave it to your discretion as to inducements. I'm glad to know there's lots doing in your town. I'm sure if the two teams got together, there would be more than lots doing." Next. Here are just some other examples of the less regular kinds of scheduling opportunities. They had correspondence from the New York Colored Giants about scheduling exhibitions. This one had a mark on the back saying it had been answered, but there was no response in the file, and there was a follow-up inquiry from that team. There's another one from the New York Blue Sox, and if you look closely, it says first class semi-pro white traveling team. And then there were two women's teams that wanted to stage exhibition games. Here's the letter from the New York Bloomer Girls, which says, "The girls took fans by storm with their overhand throwing." So there's all kinds of interesting correspondence in this file. Next. There's also documentation of the financing of the team. You can see there's an advertising solicitation. There's a subscription ticket, basically a ticket to a dance to pay for expenses of the team, which were on the order of $100 for the year, by the way. In an earlier subscription, I didn't find any documents, but there was a season opening effort to raise money, at which the highlight was the showing of 10 short films that Edison had just made in which John McGraw was shown telling stories from baseball. And I asked about those, but they've been lost. They're not anywhere anymore. Then there's correspondence about providing uniforms and supplies. There was another offer from American Tobacco Company to provide free uniforms, which was dated the same day as a Henry Ford / Thomas Edison campaign against cigarettes that Lawrence will be telling you about. And one more slide, I think. There was also a good bit of personnel correspondence, people asking for tryouts, trying to get uniforms back from players who had been taken off the team and so forth. I pulled this one from the center page is actually the third page of this. It's from a pitcher named Harold Brown, who was complaining that Shrump Riley was being paid every week for his fielding, but Brownie hadn't been paid yet, and he was running up expenses. Brownie was a regular correspondent of Mr. Hayes, and he had a lot of complaints about the 20 cents of car fare he had to spend and what have you. And here he's saying that he'd been offered by others $5 or $6 per game to pitch. There's another letter in the file later where Hayes had sent him $1, and Brownie is just beside himself with gratitude for that. So there's a lot of fun stuff in here on pretty much all the aspects of the game. And anybody who's interested in this should get in touch with Lenny DeGraff at the Edison National Park, because he can help you get access to it. And that gets us to the second box, and I'll let Lawrence pick up.
Yeah. So what's in Ted's wallet? I kind of come into this a little late. I wasn't one of the sleuths at the park digging into the files at first. What wasn't mentioned in my intro is that I'm also the owner of Sunbury Press, the publishing company, and we publish JB's books. And we had an event in Easton that was terrible. I had Barnes and Noble contact me and say, "Hey, let's get a bunch of authors for Sunbury Press Day in Easton." We organized this, got this all together. A bunch of us show up there. I went personally. Jerry was there, and we ended up sitting around talking to each other all day, which turned out to be a blessing. And so one of the things that was shared with me that day was some baseball cards were discovered in this box. And what do you think of them? And when I saw them, I said, "It's a book." And he said, "What?" I said, "Yes, it's a book. This is an interesting story because you don't find treasure troves of T206 baseball cards all that often, especially ones that have the provenance of this particular set of cards." So we put it together into a book, What's in Ted's Wallet. It's about the cards that were discovered there at the park in the file, and they were in the possession of the youngest son of Thomas Edison, Theodore Edison, also known as Ted. Theodore is hard to see in this picture, but he is on the right side of the photo, and it looks like he's a bit distorted or something. Not sure if it's just something happened to the photo afterwards. So picture of Ted with the family. One of the things to note is the age difference between father and son. Ted was born in 1898, his father 51 years older than him. And as you've heard, Thomas Edison, very interested in baseball. It's very likely that Ted picked up on that interest either independently or maybe because of his father. At some point, though, we think in around 1909, so Ted would be roughly 11 years old, maybe 10, 11 years old, going on his 12th year. There was a wallet that he picked up, acquired, maybe was gifted, or just, who knows, maybe he picked it up off a street somewhere. But we've dated it through some forensic analysis to 1909. And it's likely just like a gift, compliments of the United States Hotel. And he's just a kid, got a wallet, and what does he start doing with it? And Ted somehow starts to collect T206 baseball cards. How he gets these cards, why he gets these cards, well, we'll think about that a little bit. But one of the things that's interesting is the cards come from a variety of teams, players. Of course, there are some duplicates. I'll get into some of the stats a little bit, but essentially, the T206 cards themselves were issued by the American Tobacco Company in 1909 to 1911. One of the reasons I got really interested in the project is not only as an historian, but for a former card collector. I used to have quite a collection, and T206 cards were among them. No, I never had the Wagner. No, I never had the Plank. And spoiler, there's no Wagner or Plank in Ted's wallet. Wish there was. There are some very interesting cards, though. If you know anything about the T206 cards, it was very, very extensive, and for the time was quite an impressive set. And it's sort of like the golden era classic baseball card set. There were 3 different series. I won't get into all the details about that, but 3 different series manufactured in 6 different plants. And then there were 16 different backs. And the backs would represent, they were advertisements for the various brands of cigarettes. So if you do the math, 16 times 6 times 3, and depending which cards were in which series, you can get to quite a few varieties of each individual card. And some of them are very, very rare. What I can tell you, though, is none of Ted's cards were rare. They were all fairly common cards. This is a room in the house. I think this is fairly close to his bedroom. This is a family room that very likely would have been the room that Ted may have come into with his cards to mess around with them. If you notice some of the cards, they look like they've been in and out of the wallet a few times. So who knows what he was doing, if he was playing some kind of game with them. Also, we don't know for sure that whether or not he pulled them out here at the house or he was doing this elsewhere, perhaps at school. Piedmont, the most common back of the cards. This is an advertisement for Piedmont, not the back of a baseball card, but it does note on here that pictures of your favorite baseball players in the big leagues are now in Piedmont packages. And so you got a card in each cigarette pack. And so in order for Ted to have 61 cards, there would have been quite a few cigarette packs that would have had to have been consumed. I can't imagine an 11-year-old boy smoking that many cigarettes. So there's a lot of thought about, or wonder about, where did he get these cards? In the meantime, his dad was certainly aware of these kinds of cards because he was pictured on them. So there were series of famous inventors, other sports figures, baseball players were very popular as subject matter. Also, Edison was not exactly happy with the cigarette industry. We talk about Wagner and Plank and their reluctance to be on the cards, and thus they're very rare cards because they were taken out of the set. Edison, this isn't specifically about T206 baseball cards, but he had a thing against cigarettes. He believed that the paper in the cigarettes was harmful for your health, and he was in a campaign against that. And I guess this is a letter with Henry Ford also involved in this campaign. So in the box were correspondence about this situation and letters written, and also some more information about the American Tobacco Company and their cigarette cards. So Thomas Edison actively trying to influence the cigarette market, maybe, eliminate cigarettes from the market. Meanwhile, his son Ted is collecting the cards. So why was Ted collecting these cards? Again, he had like 51 years between his father and him. Was he trying to do this to get his dad's attention? Was he trying to fit in with his schoolmates? Was he just attracted by the ads? We don't think he was smoking these cigarettes. I don't think he could have purchased them. He probably had the money to, but I don't think he would have been allowed to. It seems like somebody at his school probably made these cards available to him, allowed him to keep them. It also looks like he may have traded cards with his buddies because he seemed to accumulate certain teams and had very few duplicates. There's also a thought that he could have been a fan of Zane Grey, who had been a baseball player and also novelist. And here is a video. Let's see if it plays. It's one of the early Edison videos. I believe one of these gentlemen running is Zane Grey.
Yeah, I think it's the second one. This is actually the first movie of baseball ever made.
Very cool. Not much baseball going on there, but definitely a connection between Edison and baseball. Zane Grey wrote a number of baseball novels. The Shortstop came out around that time. It was very popular. We don't know if Ted had that on his bookshelf, but Edison and Grey knew each other and associated with one another. And it's very possible that Ted even met Zane Grey at some point. So the cards, you can see a list of the names of the players that are in the set. And if there's a 2 next to it, he had duplicates. So he did have in the center, you see Matheson, New York National League, 2 cards of Christy Matheson. But pretty remarkable that they are distributed so well. So seems to tell me that he was doing some wheeling and dealing with his cards. He did have a lot of New York Giants. He had a lot of Philadelphia A's. Trying to remember the other team. He had a good number of. I know he also had a Cobb. You see on the left there, Cobb, Detroit. One of the things about the book is it has a picture of each individual card and then details about the card, the player, and so on. So it's comprehensive in that regard. So you get a view of the whole collection. We even show you a typical back of the cards and which ones were duplicate. So here you can see quite a few of the cards had the sweet caporal or sweet caporal back. Very few of them had Tolstoy and only one Piedmont. There were some condition issues with this card set. So, when you look at this and you think, wow, what happened there? Otto Nabe. Obviously, Teddy was pulling this card in and out of his wallet quite a bit. And there are different kinds of games you can play with cards, dice games. These cards could have been used in something like that. And maybe he wanted to get a card of Nabe, and maybe it was just hard to find one. It looks like he took a chunk out of it with his teeth, but we don't know. Here's 3 of the really top cards that are in the set. Of course, the Cobb on the left, Walter Johnson, and Christy Matheson, and he had 2 Mathesons. So another thing about the condition, you can see the rounded corners. If you know anything about baseball cards, you want to see sharp corners, nice clear, no grit or dirt or staining. So these cards were in Ted's wallet for decades. And that same wallet that he had as a kid was then stored away in this box in the archive. We don't know how many years Ted carried this wallet with him. I'm guessing it was probably just a short time, but that wallet with those baseball cards was retained by him for his entire life. So to him, it was a memento from his childhood that he valued highly. I think if he would have been taking them out of his wallet over his entire lifetime, you wouldn't see them in even this condition. They would have really deteriorated. So it is a time capsule, probably from about 1912, 13, 14 at the latest, when he stopped using the wallet or looking at the cards would be my guess. There is an interesting connection here where there's a number of cards related to the Merkle game and then the subsequent playoff game. So you see some Cubs, you see some Giant players here who had a role. Of course, Merkle himself, and that card's in pretty good shape. So that's the presentation. Any questions?
If you have a question for our presenters, Lawrence and Jerry, tonight, go down to the bottom of the screen and hit the react button. When you hit react, you'll see another button that says raise hand. Raise your hand and we'll get you in line to ask questions of our presenters this evening. I can only imagine opening this.
Can we take the slides off so we can see
that? Might be a good idea, huh? There we go. Hey, that's much better. It's a professional act. I can only imagine going through those cards and saying, wow, what a time capsule.
Yeah.
It's just amazing stuff to have in your hand. I've never even held a T206 card, let alone been in the presence of one. So.
Well, I was not I had the baseball card collection that my mother threw out, like,
of course. Yeah.
right. And I knew about the T206s, but I wasn't a card person per se. And when I found that box, they were stored, the first slide with the pictures we had of the cards was a sheet of 9, and they were in these sheets of 9, just plastic covers, and nobody had been into them for 30 years since they showed up in the archive. I knew what they were. I wasn't really totally appreciative, but I knew that they had something, and the archive, they didn't really understand what they had. So that was what piqued my attention on the cards. Now, I will say, after the book came out, we were invited to sort of premiere it at the National Park last June on Edison Day, and they put the cards on display for the first time. And I understand the count of people who came through and looked at them was 650. So that was good. Lawrence, you have any other thoughts on the?
Yeah, I think it was great of the park to display them. Now they were in a glass case, and you couldn't pick them up and hold that Ty Cobb.
But they had repackaged them in individual holders.
It was very well done, and yeah, I'm glad that they got that attention, and then now they're being treated a little differently because they are, they're not just Edison family heirlooms, but they also have a little value as collectibles too.
That's for sure.
So they should be preserved, and the park is doing a great job at that.
Ben Abel, you're up. Go.
I actually did have a question for you, and you did take the slides down because I was looking at one of the pictures on the slides, Jerry. And I was trying to figure out who the 3 gentlemen were in those slides. On the far right hand side, if you could put it back up.
This is the early slide.
Yeah, it's whatever.
Yeah, the one on the person on the left in that slide was Ty Cobb. In the middle was Edison, and the right was Connie Mack.
That's what I wanted to know. That's what I figured. I didn't recognize Cobb, but I recognized Mack. And I put in the chat, one of the SABR books that I read is the Shy Park book. Obviously, Mack's history is there with the Athletics. So
yeah, actually, the Winter Estates, I think they still are showing it. They have a display in their museum down there that they borrowed from the Connie Mack collection that has some of those photos and some other memorabilia in it.
That Shy Park book is available for free download at SABR.org in the bookstore. You can go there and grab that book today. Dixie was holding up a T206 just a minute ago. Dixie, say something so you get on camera.
Just one of the many cards I have. It just happens to be close by, so I picked it up.
Which one is that?
Schieber? No, McMillan.
McMillan.
Guy named McMillan.
Looks
I have about 5 or 6.
Yeah.
No big deal, but I have them.
That's cool. Next up is Ryan McClanahan. Ryan, unmute. How you doing, brother?
Good. This is awesome. Here's one of mine. So it's Wee Willie Keeler right here.
Ooh.
Yeah. Really kind of interesting. Zayden Gray did he actually play for Edison at all?
Zane Grey was a college star, I think, at Brown, and he played for the Newark Bears from the last week of April to the first week of June of 1898. That was his entire pro career. And that happened to be when Edison was filming the ball game. And then Gray's book that we showed you was published in 1909, the same year that Ted started collecting cards. So we thought that might have been one of the reasons why Ted was a baby in arms in 1898, but
Right.
It's undoubtedly the case that he would have seen his father's film about baseball at least once, and they might have discussed who was in it.
Oh, okay. Really interesting. What kind of preservation are the cards in now? Have they gone to like PSA or anything? Any grading companies?
Lawrence, you want?
No, I don't think they have been. I think that they are now stored individually in plastic rather than in the old PVC sheets, which would have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but they haven't been graded. They're in a vault within a vault within a vault, as I understand it. But the Park Service doesn't really want to have them graded or assign value to them. They just, it's a cultural thing for them.
Yeah, and like the condition is, I mean, there's nothing that would knock it out of the park from a condition perspective. So you can kind of, circulate it, different grades of maybe VG on down. Yeah.
Also, Ted, when did he pass away? Do you know?
92.
92 or 93, and then the wallet with the cards just became part of 75 linear feet of papers that were passed along to the archive at the park.
Oh, okay. Huh. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Karen Holleran, you're up. Go.
Yes, I was wondering, was there anything else baseball related that was found in that that was found also with along with the cards?
Only the box on the 1914 Industrial League team, and that's not to say there couldn't be something else there, because they're still actually archiving materials. They haven't got to everything yet. But that was the only thing that Lenny pulled out as being systematically baseball. The Park Service has some photos, Edison baseball photos online, not very many, and they are undoubtedly in the collection at the park. But I didn't see those firsthand. I had them from online.
Okay, thank you. This is very fascinating.
Thanks.
Dr. Paul. How you doing, Paul?
I'm doing well. How you doing, Bruce?
I'm doing great. You're it, man. Go get him.
I am it. Wow, that's very good. Listen, I know Jerry's much too modest to do this, so I'm going to be a mark. He didn't know I'm doing this either, but this is his whole series. This never happened. The Gamekeepers, Double Day, Double Take, the federal case, and this is the one he just talked about. The Keystone Corner with the Edison picture right on the cover. Listen, these are phenomenal books. And I've told this to Jerry a number of times. We've corresponded many times. I went to see the baseball cards in Edison that day. And if you haven't read these books, take a look at them because they are just fantastic books. And I've loved every single one of them. They're page turners. He has a great way of writing. This presentation was terrific, of course. Lawrence and Jerry, you both hit it out of the park. But I wanted to do a little pitch there for Jerry because I knew he wouldn't, or I sensed he wouldn't tell you that he has a whole big collection of these great books, and they're well worth reading. They're fun. Like I say, they're mystery stories. You're going to like the characters. He goes back and forth in time. They're just fantastic. So keep up the good work.
Paul, the checks in the mail.
I was going to say the same thing. We let a ringer in, didn't we?
Yeah. You didn't even know I was coming. So
Dan Sichalski, how you doing, Dan?
Good, thanks. This was great. I loved it. I love the book. And so, yeah, for anyone who doesn't have it, like every card is shown here with a little short bio of the player. So you really get a good look at all the cards. I was going to ask a question earlier, but Jerry, you already answered it on how they had the cards when you found them, when you came across them. They were in like the 9-pocket pages. So, but that just reminded me, I just wanted to share this story. I grew up in Monmouth County, in Little Silver, and across the street from where I grew up was the house of like one of the oldest families in town, the Sickles Parker family. And when the matriarch died or the daughter of the family, original family, she lived to like 100 and something. And when she died, she left the whole house and everything in it to the town. And um, the town didn't have money to do anything with it, so it just kind of sat there. It had a water main break. Some stuff got damaged, so that's when they finally started going through everything. And they had this one tin that they were going to throw out. And one of the women who was working with it shook it and heard something inside, and she opened it up, and there were about maybe a dozen tobacco cards inside.
Cool.
And my mom was working on this committee that did it too, and it was kind of the same thing. I think the boy who collected them was maybe about the same age as Ted at around that same time.
Mhm.
And so like they were just at my mom's friend's house. So I went down one day. Other than Liz, who had pulled them out, I was probably the first person to touch them in 90 years or more. And I put them in the sleeves, and now they keep them at Borough Hall down in Little Silver. And whenever they do events at the homestead there, they pull them out and put them on display.
That's cool. You know, Ted was an interesting fellow. He actually ended up getting a PhD from MIT and was an engineer himself and had his own lab in West Orange, but he was also a very active environmentalist. And at the time that he was collecting the cards, the family was summering at Monhegan Island, and he became a very prominent source of charitable support for environmental causes at the island over the years. He went in '09. He had just changed schools. He'd been going to school at Haverford School in Pennsylvania and had just changed over to the Montclair Military Academy in West Orange, or just down the road from West Orange, I guess. And actually, one of the people who came to the display at the park was the archivist for the school, and asked him whether, at that time, from what I could tell, the school was half commuter and half residential, and we were trying to figure out whether Ted was trying to impress his friends with the cards or whether he had picked up the idea of the cards from them and so forth. So I asked whether he was a live-in or resident or commuter, and he was a commuter. So somebody was driving him back and forth from Glenmont, the estate, a couple miles down the road to the school every day. And there was some speculation that it was the chauffeur who was smoking the cigarettes, but we were never able to confirm that.
One of the other things about the cards is, I mentioned the Merkel game. So Merkel's boner would have been in the news, of course, and discussed in the area extensively. So Ted would have heard those discussions, maybe even among his friends would have been talking about it and maybe trying to reenact in some way with the cards that situation. But the other thought with some of the cards would be that these were players he met in one way or another. So I think a good number of the cards may have been players through his father, either going to a game maybe with Connie Mack or some other ballpark, some other situation, or even while they were in the minor leagues, could have met these players. So can't prove it. There's no records of that, but it is a thought. There does appear to be some kind of curating on Ted's part. Why did he keep certain ones, and what did he trade for what? We don't know, but he does seem to gravitate towards those New York Giants.
Ouch. Back to Paul.
There we go. Dan, you just sent that link of the pictures of the cards. Is that the plank card that Lawrence was talking about?
Oh yeah, maybe it is.
Is there
All
a
right, so I just did a quick look. That thing's worth like $1 gazillion.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And same thing
The
as
town of Little Silver, if anybody lives there, they should sell that card, and it should get everybody. Nobody would have to pay taxes for a couple of years.
it was
Oh,
the
yeah.
same thing that the wow, and I held that card.
And they are in excellent condition.
I know.
Yeah.
It's amazing that they didn't
I'll tell you what,
Good.
get damaged.
there aren't that many plank cards if it's not known that one exists.
And you should also look at the back of the Cobb card, because
Yeah.
there were just a very few that had an unusual back.
I'm gonna have to go catch up. My mom moved out of town, but I can still.
Yeah, the backs can definitely and with the plank card, depending on the back, you can tell whether it's real or not. It has to have the correct back. It has to have the correct manufacturer and all that, because there's so few plank cards. The Cobb card, if it has a Ty Cobb back, that was a special promotional variety, and is worth a lot of money. There was a place down in Georgia or someplace where they found a bag of these under the floorboards and a bunch of Ty Cobb cards some years ago. So these pockets of treasures of these T206 cards are still being found in places.
Mark Hoyle, go. You're on mute, brother. You're on mute.
Those are Philadelphia Carmel cards. Those aren't T206s. So it's the same pose as its T206 plank, but that's a Carmel card.
Okay.
So very the same size, same coloring, but those are Philadelphia Caramels.
And therefore,
No, you're right. I
remember
that now from looking at the
they're
back.
in great shape, so they're still worth something. So
Yeah, no, they're nice cards. You're right. Not the rare variety of plank.
10 cents as
Although I would
opposed to 10,000.
I would take it.
Yeah.
There you go. Oh man, this has been fantastic. Just the stories and the history. Oh my goodness. Gentlemen, how can we get our hands on these books?
They're available wherever books are sold, but I also highly recommend coming to our website, sunburypress.com, and they're on sale there as well. And if you buy $35 worth or more of books with the code FS35, you get free shipping.
There you go.
F as in Frank, S as in Sam, 35.
There you go. So we've got a lot of great events coming up, and we've got one coming up this weekend and one coming up this Monday, but I am going to toss it right on over to my friend Donna Muscarella. Donna, you there?
I am here.
Tell us what's going on, Donna.
So I'm going to skip ahead to the Monday one first, because that's the one that's going to be most accessible to everybody, because it's a virtual. I'm going to throw a link into the chat. That's the registration link for that. So just like the Bruce Springsteen presentation that Dan Sichalski treated us to a couple of weeks ago, I got a teaser on a presentation that was being put together or conceptualized by the amazing Jason Schwartz, who's the co-chair of the SABR Baseball Cards Research Committee and a member of the Emil Roth Chicago chapter. And he was looking to put together a presentation about Rachel Robinson, but not Rachel Robinson as Rachel Robinson, but Rachel Robinson in her life before Jackie, and all the things that led her to become his rock and the amazing ambassador for baseball and women and civil rights and everything that she's come to stand for. So I'm just going to read for you Jason's abstract. He gave a more condensed version of this presentation at the 2024 SABR International Women's Baseball Center Women in Baseball Conference. This is a more expanded version. He's reached out to me. He wanted to get to know the audience a little bit and put some more personal stuff in there. And anybody who's seen any of Jason's presentations that he's done over the years, they are all spectacular. I'm going to call this one can't miss, regardless of whether or not Jason tags it as that in the SABR Weekly. It's Monday night, which we scheduled purposely for February 10th because it is Rachel and Jackie Robinson's wedding anniversary. So we're going to celebrate their wedding anniversary by paying tribute to Rachel. And here is his abstract. Let me put my glasses on. There may be no more beloved or accomplished woman in baseball today or ever than Rachel Robinson, who famously supported her husband Jack's breaking of baseball's color barrier in 1947 and has worked for more than half a century since his 1972 passing to honor, steward, and extend his legacy through her leadership of the Jackie Robinson Foundation, the Jackie Robinson Museum, and various other educational and philanthropic endeavors. While much attention and study has justifiably centered around the importance of Rachel Robinson to the Jackie Robinson story, far less focus has been placed on the 22 years of her life before she was Mrs. Robinson. Drawing from interviews, the Black press, high school yearbooks, and other sources, this session examines Rachel's early years when she was still Rachel Annetta Issam, placing special focus on the formative experiences and relationships that influenced her growth into the baseball and civil rights icon we know her as today. So Mrs. Robinson is still alive. I know that Jason worked a little bit with the Jackie Robinson Foundation to try and source some information. And this is going to be fantastic. So anybody who can join us, come on down. The link is in the Zoom, but it's also available on the SABR events calendar. And members, non-members alike, everybody, hope to see you there. The event this Saturday, quick teaser for that, it's at the Youth Museum of Hinchliffe Stadium. And on the site where Larry Doby played his high school baseball and high school football, ran some high school track, tried out for the Newark Eagles, started his professional baseball career from that very spot. There's now a museum there that was added on with the restoration of Hinchliffe Stadium. And we're having an event that's going to start at noon at the museum with a social hour. Then we're going to view the film Pride Against Prejudice, the Larry Doby documentary. And then following that is a panel discussion moderated by Dave Kaplan, founding director of the Yogi Berra Museum, he's an author, an editor, an educator, had a big hand in the formation of the Youth Museum. Luke Eplin, who wrote the wonderful book, Our Team, Joseph Thomas Moore, who is Larry Doby's biographer, and drumroll, Claire Smith, Hall of Fame journalist, will be there with us. We're gonna have a little time after that for Q&A and a little bit more socializing. And I have arranged for those who are not local, there will be a recording of the panel discussion. We're figuring out how we're going to distribute that afterwards, but we will be recording the panel discussion. One of the very nice young ladies who works at the museum offered to record it for us. And so we're going to be able to share that with everybody. But if you can be there in person, please come join us. The museum has asked for people to make reservations because we can comfortably hold about 100. So if you have any questions, the information's posted again on SABR events, but people are always welcome to reach out to me. My information's in my SABR bio, but my email address is thelensofdonnaM, like think photography, @gmail.com. Reach out. Bruce can put you in touch, whatever. Always happy to help answer any questions and help everybody celebrate baseball.
Now, keep in mind, Sukeforth chapter members, if you want to go to that presentation Monday night at 7 o'clock, you need to sign up through the SABR events calendar. This is not a Sukeforth chapter meeting. This is an Elysian Fields chapter meeting. Sign up for that at SABR events at the SABR events calendar. And you don't want to miss Jason Schwartz. He is fantastic. He's such a good guy. He's one of SABR's finest. This is going to be a very good presentation. Now, finally, before we get out of here, if you're a baseball fan watching on YouTube and you like what you see, Please like this video and subscribe to our channel to be alerted to each of our weekly uploads. And if you're not yet a member, you need to join the Society for American Baseball Research, the premier baseball community. Offering an amazing baseball buffet of options to explore your fandom, SABR boasts more than 35 different research communities, over 80 regional chapters, and innumerable opportunities to connect with baseball minds across the world. For more information, go to sabr.org/join today. Jerry and Lawrence, you're fantastic. I can't thank you enough for doing this.
No, you're quite
Thanks.
welcome.
And thanks everybody for showing up.
It's been a pleasure.
Well, we appreciate you. Thank you very much. We're going to see everybody Monday night for the Elysian Fields chapter meeting. If you're in the neighborhood on Saturday, we'll see you at the museum. But let's get everybody out of here. Have a good night, everybody.